Except you don't think that because this is America. Well, hello everyone, I'm Jimmy Leonard, and welcome back to World on Fire, a show where we bring fresh perspectives to burning questions in current events and culture. And especially welcome, if this is your first time joining, I cordially invite you to subscribe so you never miss out on any of my wild podcasting antics here. So normally I like to start off with a more lighthearted beat in the show, but this has not been a lighthearted few weeks. The Black Lives Matter movement has swept the world in a way that feels unseen before in my lifetime. And I was about to say unprecedented, but that word has been officially banned for the rest of 2020, I think, between COVID-19 and murder hornets and the whole Grimes, Elon Musk baby name thing. Just nothing else is allowed to be unprecedented, at least until 2021. It's over like the remainder of the Pistons season. Yeah, that's for my Michigan people because literally no one else cares. So tonight, I'm going to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, and to be honest, I was a little hesitant to do this topic. It's not because I'm not enraged at the senseless brutality at the hands of the police or the systemic racism that creates disparities in health and education and economic opportunities, because I am enraged at those things. But as my social media feeds have essentially become a battle of white wokeness over the last few days, I have given serious pause to whether the world needs another voice white-splaining racism instead of listening to the people who have been marginalized and who've been oppressed for decades, way before someone posted a video of police brutality on Facebook. But I am going to speak up, and here's why. I can wrestle all day with my white guilt and the potentially self-serving motivations for producing a show on a trending topic, and I'm aware of those things. But at the end of the day, I believe that justice and truth are more important than my insecurities or my motivations. And because this is something that needs to be talked about, I'm talking about it. So with that out of the way, let's jump in. As rallies have gripped the nation and really the entire world these last couple of weeks, one rising refrain has been to defund the police. This is arguably the most salient and most misunderstood aspect of the Black Lives Matter movement. And while some say this is an inevitable next step, as previous reforms like adding body cameras or extra trainings haven't eliminated instances of unnecessary force, many fear that getting rid of the police would make things a whole lot worse than they are right now. President Trump, predictably, was quick to defend our nation's police this week, saying that they're doing an excellent job and that crime rates are the lowest they've ever been in recorded history. Which I guess when you habitually acquit white police officers for murder, it does lower the numbers. But saying defund the police is a little bit more nuanced than simply axing the police force. And forgive me for going all low-budget John Oliver here, but defunding the police doesn't mean no police at all, or at least it shouldn't. This is call for systematic reform. We're on the back end of a national crisis in which we were scrambling for a hospital mask, and yet somehow our police forces seem to have unlimited budgets for helicopters and riot gear and tear gas. The idea is that instead of buying more helicopters, we should be funding social services that deal with issues of mental health and hunger and unemployment and homelessness and give adequate resources to schools and hospitals and shelters and clinics. I couldn't locate any national data on this to get an exact number, but a significant percentage of 911 calls aren't for violent crime. We often are sending paramedics or firefighters, and we should be involving counselors and social workers, but just aren't equipped to do so. So it doesn't mean no police or that we wouldn't respond to emergencies. It just means that first responders should be more concerned with health and human services than with stopping the bad guys. So the Minneapolis City Council announced their intention this week to dismantle that city's police force in favor of a new, more equitable, wider-reaching public safety system. And the mayor of Los Angeles is promising to reduce the budget of the LAPD, and other cities are making similar considerations. But the question on a lot of people's minds is still, would this just lead to a huge uptick in crime? Because if we don't have the police keeping us safe, and again, the us there really has never meant all of us, but if we don't have the police keeping us safe, would we be safe? Well, the fact is, we don't have much historical data from places that have had a huge police presence and then all of a sudden took it away where we could see what happened. But what we do have are white suburbs. And I can say this because I'm white. I'm so white that I wear vintage t-shirts to microbreweries while working remotely and earning my second master's degree in liberal arts. I condemn billionaires on Twitter before I Uber to the airport to be on time for my cousin's destination wedding. I go to Thai restaurants and order medium spice just to prove that I'm not basic. And my first rap albums were the Black Eyed Peas and Linkin Park. And if you don't get why that's funny, then congratulations on being even whiter than I am. Look, guys, I promise this is going somewhere. I've lived on both ends of the spectrum here. I grew up in a safe, wealthy suburb next to a gated community with tennis courts and private lake access and conspicuously no police guarding all of that stuff. And then my first real job was in a low-income urban area with security guards in every building and bulletproof glass inside of the church's chicken. So if more police means less crime, you might logically think that the suburb with no police had way more crime than the inner city with police on every corner. Except you don't think that because this is America. I mean, let's be real. Not every criminal gets arrested, and definitely not every arrest is because of a crime. The facts are that white and black Americans sell and use drugs at similar rates, but black Americans are over 6 times as likely to be incarcerated on drug-related offenses. The reality is that a rich white kid on drugs gets rehab, but a poor black kid on drugs gets prison. The white neighborhood I lived in growing up wasn't safe because it had tons of police. It was safe because most people had their basic needs met. They were employed, they had homes, they had access to social services and health services and nutritional food and good education. And oh yeah, when something did go wrong, the first question wasn't, how can we punish that person? The first question was, why did that happen? And what can we do to help that person? Defund the police doesn't mean that the police are pointless, but instead of giving so much money to fight crime, why don't we give money to address the underlying issues of systemic inequality, socially and educationally and economically, that often contribute to a person transgressing the law? Rehab is a lot more helpful than prison. Let's think of it like speeding on the highway. Saying defund the police isn't saying that every roadway should be an absolute free-for-all, but it is questioning the institutionalized punitive basis of how we structure our current system. I mean, is the point to find and punish criminals on the roadway, or is the point to help people and keep them safe as they're traveling from one place to another? Is the point of speed limits to set those speed traps that try to nail me for going 5 miles an hour over, or should the point be to encourage safe habits for everyone on the roadway? Should an officer pull someone over already with the intent of writing a ticket, no questions asked? Or should the intent be to understand why the person was speeding in the first place, where they're going, and to see what help they might need to reduce their risk to themselves and others? And yes, I am aware that this is a super white analogy to make here. I've been pulled over personally and let off with just a warning. I have a family member who was pulled over for speeding in a residential area without a license in the car and was let off with a warning. If you're listening, you know who you are. But that's sort of the whole point, isn't it? We were privileged enough to meet with people who saw us as human beings, not as menacing threats to public safety. And we have to stop this guilty until proven innocent mindset when it comes to people of color in this country. So if taking away some of the tools and the methods that support violence as the primary option to solving a problem is a way to do that, then yeah, let's defund the police. So specifically, what can we do, if you're not a mayor or a city council person? Well, if you're like me, and this is something that you really haven't had to think about on a daily basis, then education is a great place to start. I encourage you to check out organizations like Campaign Zero, who advocate to end police brutality and have put forward some comprehensive policy changes that would increase accountability, reform ineffective practices, and seek to reallocate resources. Everybody can give something or serve somehow to work toward these goals. It's not actually about defunding the police. It's about funding the resources needed to correct institutionalized racism and inequality so that human dignity comes first. In a world with so much tension and bitterness, I want to give space to people sharing light and positivity, and that's why tonight I'm excited to welcome artist, author, and internationally known blogger Rochelle Wisoff-Fields. Rochelle Wisoff-Fields, welcome to World on Fire. How are you this evening?
Very well, thank you.
Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show. So how have you been spending your time in these last few weeks of quarantine here?
Well, I've actually been extremely busy.
Okay.
I'm painting. I'm a watercolor artist. I've got a novel in progress. And I facilitate a blog challenge called Friday Fictioneers. So very little downtime here.
Yeah, it sounds like it keeps you busy. Yeah, let's talk about your art. I was just on your website earlier looking through some of this art. I mean, a lot of people say, I'm an artist, I do painting, and I don't know, I guess I've learned to be a little skeptical, but right. I was looking at this and this is incredible. You have these side-by-sides of photographs. And I understand you do this on commission. People send you this stuff.
Well, I haven't gotten any commissions for a while. I do portraits on commission.
Okay.
I've done a couple of things where, like with somebody's vision or a dream.
Oh, wow.
Somebody wanted me to paint their house. But basically, I look at things and go, okay, what can I paint next?
Is this something you've kind of always known you wanted to do, that you wanted to be an artist, or was there a moment when you realized this is a gift that I have?
No, it's I mean, a little of both, but I mean, I remember very early on, even in kindergarten, when other kids would want me to draw for them, I think I was born with a purple crayon in my hand.
Okay.
And there was a point when I think I was 7 or 8 years old when my father said, well, you might not be good enough to be a professional artist. And I handled it like a 7 or 8 year old, and I threw a temper tantrum.
Oh.
How dare you say that? So it's something I always wanted to do. It's always been a part of me. I went to the Kansas City Art Institute.
Okay.
I actually didn't study watercolor there. I did oils and prints and disagreed with my art teachers on what art was.
As every artist should, yes.
Right. And I was married at the time. So after 2 years, I decided I would rather have a baby, and which is what I did. I dropped out and had a baby. But it's only been in really the last 10, 15 years that I've gotten back into the watercolor that I wanted to do. But I'm doing things with my art now that I would have never attempted 20 years ago. A friend that I met about 4 or 5 years ago who was an artist himself, the way he put it was that I was discovering my authentic self.
I'm looking around your blog a little bit, and I get the sense that, it sounds like someone saying this to you of discovering your authentic self is pretty powerful. But I also get the sense that you really care about that for others too. I mean, you've got so many different ways to engage on your blog. And you said you've got this Friday Fictioneers. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's all about?
Yeah, this is the 8th anniversary of when I joined it. Somebody else was doing this blog.
Okay.
Friday Fictioneers is a group of people, and we're from all around the world, that a photo prompt, and I mean, now I'm the one that puts it up. People send me photos, we'll put up the prompt, and everybody writes a 100-word story.
Runway.
So I joined. I thought, well, this is kind of a cool idea. I was working on my first novel, and I really kind of needed something to just get the juices flowing. And so I joined, and I was hooked. It's like, even my husband said, this is some of the best stuff you've ever written.
Wow.
The idea is to have a beginning, middle, and an end in 100 words or less. It's a great tool because it teaches a writer to conserve words, like what's really important to say, and it revolutionized my longer pieces. 6 months into it, Madison, the woman who had created Friday Fictioneers, decided that she was going to get out of it and pass it on to someone else. And I had like 3 people, including my husband, who said, well, why don't you take it on?
Wow.
I said, I'm not a leader. I'm more of the introvert, which is why the pandemic is not affecting me as much as an extrovert who's
Right.
pounding on the door going, let me out. I'm like, this is great. So I never saw myself as being any kind of a leader. And by the time my husband and my other 2 friends were finished with me, I'm like, okay, why not me? And I've been doing it now it'll be 8 years in October that I've been facilitating it.
Wow. And it's every week that we do this?
Every week.
What kind of feedback is there for the people who participate?
They think I'm the queen. I
Really?
mean, some of them are like, oh, just thank you for doing this. I mean, and there are some people who were in it before I was. There's a handful that have stuck with me through the whole 8 years. And, we've developed friendships, and it's fascinating because you have so many cultures involved. I have quite a few Indian writers. There are a couple in Australia. We have quite a few in the UK. Just the way people see things and the vocabulary exchange.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, what feels like it's been one of the most rewarding things for you after, every week for 8 years, getting to meet so many different writers and, as you said, see all their perspectives and how they see the world?
Yeah. I mean, that's what drew me in was you get feedback from other writers. I mean, that's the thing is, we really stress reciprocation, is if you want comments, then you comment on other people's writings. And it's interesting to see how 50 people in a week will see one photo.
So let's talk about your writing a little bit. So you said you've got a novel in progress. Is this related to some of your previous works, or is this something totally new?
The one I'm working on right now is totally new. It's based on my own battle in my 40s with an eating disorder, and ending up, well, the 5th time that I ended up in the hospital was by ambulance because I had pushed the envelope. And it's taken me 20 years to finally be able to write about it, and fictionalizing it helps me to kind of distance myself from the events in the book.
Yeah, definitely. And what message do you feel like you have for people on that subject now?
That eating disorders don't just, I mean, you think of teenage girls primarily when you think of eating disorders. It can hit any age. When I was inpatient, we had a woman in her 60s that had battled it for years and years. There were teenagers. And the thing that people don't think about is it is not a respecter of race or gender. I mean, there are men who deal with it. There's just it's a very complex disorder. And so I guess that's what I would like for people to take away is, a little better understanding.
Yeah, it's like, getting rid of some of the stigma and tearing down some of the walls, just to even have the conversation. I think probably for so many people, that's the first barrier to getting help is just thinking I'm the only one or,
Yeah.
Nobody else is going through this kind of thing.
Right. I have another novel that is with an agent that I'm very excited about, which was historical fiction, but not based on the first series of novels that you find on my webpage. So, I mean, that the first book took me 10 years to write, Please Say Kaddish for Me. It's the beginning of a trilogy.
Okay.
It's loosely based on my family. That's when I was really first starting to write. And if someone says, well, what would you write about? I said, well, my grandfather immigrated to the United States in 1903 from Poland to escape the pogroms in Eastern Europe. And people, I think, everyone's aware of the Holocaust, but not so much the pogroms, which happened, 40 years before the Holocaust. And some have even called it the dress rehearsal. That's where my family came from. So I wanted, I referred to Please Say Kaddish for Me as the dark side of Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah, I mean, people know Fiddler on the Roof, and I mean, I adore it. I know every song, almost every line. I'm obnoxious to watch the movie with. Nonetheless, it is a very lightly handled rendition of what happened.
Yeah, it's very much, life is not a musical kind of thing.
Right. So that's where I started with Chava, who's a rabbi's daughter. She's escapes one pogrom and is taken in by a family in the next village, which was called a shtetl, where she falls in love with the rabbi's son, and the rabbi's son is betrothed to someone else. But ultimately, it's about their survival of the pogrom in Kishinev in 1903, which was the first internationally recognized pogrom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Theodore Roosevelt tried to get the Tsar to denounce it, and the Tsar refused, most likely because he was behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking people who are as evil as Hitler, but
right.
We don't have the films and as much documentation.
Yeah, and it's so important to honor the people who lived through that, and also just to learn from it too. If we can't learn from the past, we're in a lot of trouble, I think. So I'm wondering, with so many cool things that you've been doing in the last 8 years and over your writing career and your artistic career, what advice would you give to someone who's kind of just starting out, or maybe has a dream but feels afraid to put words to the page or brush to paper, as they might say?
And I know, I mean, I'll do a sketch and I'll look at this blank paper and it's like, just do it. Really, I mean,
that's what you have to tell yourself is
and that's what I would tell someone else is put one foot in front of the other. Do it. Don't let people tell you can't. I mean, I had some that looked at it as, it's just another hobby.
Yeah.
And, out of such hobbies come dreams and life choices. And it's never too late. I guess that would be my message, because I didn't really discover my writing gift until I was 50. And it was like, a whole new chapter. I was working at a grocery store as a sign maker / cake decorator at the time. So yeah, when I look back at it, I just kind of go, wow. You know, I'm not where I want to be. I mean, I'd love to make the bestseller list. Who wouldn't? But, I've gotten good feedback on my work. And
So you have so many things. You have these wonderful art prints. We can do some commissions. You've got these available as note cards. You have books. We have the Friday Fictioneers. Where can we go to find out about all of this stuff?
hey, best place would be my blog, which is Rochelle Wisoff, all one word, .com.
We can link that below so you can find it more easily there.
Right. And, please follow the links. I found that people aren't clicking on the book link. I mean, they'll come for the stories, but across the top of the page, I have, an art page where they can find how to get the prints.
Yeah.
And then the book page. And the books are available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com.
And I always like to ask sort of an off the wall kind of question to you is if you could do a portrait of anyone living or dead, do you have like a dream portrait that you've always wanted to paint?
Yeah, I've done so many. I mean, don't ask me why. The first one that popped into my head was Maya Angelou.
Yeah, I won't ask you why. Like,
so much character in that face.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Rochelle Wisoff-Fields, we've got the links below. Thank you so much for being a part of World on Fire.
Thank you.
Well, that's the show, ladies and gents. So please show your support by checking out the links below, subscribing, and sharing this episode on social media. Until next time, I'm Jimmy Leonard, and this is World on Fire.